President-elect Trump has picked crypto supporter Paul Atkins to chair the Securities and Exchange Commission. This comes after 4 years of Gary Gensler's tough take on digital assets. Joining us now to discuss Trump's pro-crypto picks and how they will reshape the industry, Blockchain Association CEO Kristin Smith. Kristin, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm wondering, because I've had this question that I've asked myself, I've asked others since Trump was elected, and we've seen this sort of astronomical rise in Bitcoin. What specifically are the regulations in place that have handcuffed Bitcoin's growth, in your view, that will now be lifted under this new administration?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When we talk about the SEC, we're really talking about things other than Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been perceived to be a commodity, and it's been something outside of it. But the fact that there isn't a basic regulatory framework for the exchanges and the trading of these assets, I think is something that has kept people out of Bitcoin. When you look at all of the institutions, the wirehouses and others, they see like, oh, they think this is unregulated. And if there were regulated markets like people are used to having with financial assets, I think people would be more open to coming into Bitcoin. But, you know, I'm in the camp of going back to that survey. I think it goes to 200 before it goes to 50. I think that, you have a lot of people that are learning about Bitcoin for the first time. And I think, as more and more sort of retail financial advisors are advising their clients to do this, I think that we're going to see more people come into Bitcoin. Also, we see a lot of countries around the world, or even states around the United States, that are building Bitcoin reserves. I'm not sure that's something that the U.S. is going to do right out of the gate, but people are looking to hold more Bitcoin, not less. And so I think just having that change of attitude from the top, having a president who says, hey, we want U.S. to be the capital of this industry. We want to fight for you. We're behind you. We're going to get the rules right. We're going to get it done here. Just having that change of attitude at the top makes a tremendous amount of difference.
Kristin, I have a question, and I don't know what the chances are that this happens, but I have been wondering whether there's going to be a backlash. So one of the things that we were talking about this earlier this morning, there's this article in the Journal just about how Russia is now using Bitcoin in part to get around some of their own issues and to get around some of the financial system and the like. And while clearly this President-elect Trump has been very bullish about Bitcoin and wants to figure out crypto, I wonder whether there's going to be an argument made at some point that potentially this could be a negative for the sovereignty of the U.S. dollar long term, and that if it actually has great success, it could actually create real problems, and whether that will actually be anti-American. I'm not suggesting that is the case.
Yeah,
I just wonder whether that the farther we get along in this dialogue and discussion, you could see some people say actually to be, quote unquote, America first, actually Bitcoin would be at odds with that, oddly enough. And so I just wonder sort of how you think this whole thing shakes out.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting question. I think, if you look outside of Bitcoin and go over to stable coins, dollar-backed stable coins are really the true source of power for the American dollar. Because when you have something like Bitcoin, that price fluctuates. As we see, it's down a little bit today. People around the globe want to have a stable place to hold their money. And when, most of these stable coins are backed by U.S. treasuries, it's tremendously important for the dollar. It gives anyone around the world easy access to the dollar that they can move around quickly. And so, I think when we're looking at U.S. strength for the dollar, I think we need to be looking more at stable coins than at Bitcoin. But, listen, I think there is a magic moment here. I am not, I've been working in Washington for almost 25 years. These are incredibly rare moments. You don't have an industry that has such a pro-crypto Congress, both on the bipartisan level, right, as well as a pro-crypto president. I mean, these are really, really unique situation that we find ourselves in within the crypto industry. And so my message working with the industry has been, we got to strike while the iron's hot here. We need to work on getting the appropriate legislation done. We also have this rulemaking pathway that wasn't available in the last administration. So we could have the SEC or the CFTC use the authority that they clearly have to help move the ball forward to find that regulatory framework that works for the industry. And so, I think that this is a real opportunity, but we need to act now as an industry. We need to do it in a unified way, or we're going to miss this moment, and there could end up being some sort of backlash or something that sets us back again, and then we have to, continue to build up that political capital.
So in terms of that regulatory framework that you referred to regarding the exchanges specifically, what are some of the tent poles of that you're seeking? I mean, what are some of the hallmarks, and how will they affect the likes of a Coinbase or a Robinhood?
Yeah, I think if you talk to any of the exchanges or the brokers that are out there today, is they want a place to be able to go and register. Like, they want to have government with some oversight to ensure that there aren't conflicts of interest, that things are running smoothly, that there isn't any funny business going on at that level. When you have a centralized entity that's performing those types of services, this doesn't apply to DeFi. This is just for the centralized platforms. And we also need to figure out some way to solve this issue of what are these tokens. This issue of token classification has been a problem for a long time. And then some, basic rules around custody. These are all things that would be very easy to do, but some of them, there are not clear authorities today. So we need Congress to actually pass a law to do that. But I think having a place for these exchanges to register would be very helpful in moving the market into the next generation here.
And just quickly, you said 200 before 50, but does it ever go back to 50, or is that history?
I think it's history. I mean, listen, I'm the policy person, right? I work in Washington. I am not Bitcoin rich myself. So, listen, I think that more people are opening up to this. I think it's gone so mainstream in the short time that I've been doing this work, and I think that when people realize that, boy, I want to have 1%, 2% of my retirement portfolio in Bitcoin, that is kind of a one-way street. And I think as we're talking with different institutions, there's been this shift of they can't afford to not have an informed position on this. And I think that, ultimately is going to lead more and more people to buying Bitcoin over time.